The Poet Speaks podcast is sponsored by the Poetry Lab. Poetry Lab partners attend a monthly workshop led by a teaching artist who represents a fresh new voice in the writing world. The goal, now more than ever, is to hold space for poets to write, read, and craft their learning journeys in a supportive community. And it's only $35 a month. Sign up at thepoetrylab.com/lab partners. All right, hello, welcome back everyone to the Poet Speaks podcast, the #1 podcast in the world for spoken word. Don't you forget it, okay? All right, and today we have a very, very special guest. All right, our next guest is the founder of the Novel Encounter and a published author and poet. He's well known for his live typewritten poetry, where he gets invited by brands and to festivals and special occasions to engage with the guests for customized poems. Simply give him 3 words and he will write something heartfelt for you on the spot. Everybody, welcome to the Poet Speaks podcast, Adam Ty. Adam, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I was introduced to your work through an amazing video, and people were giving you 3 simple words, and that's all you needed, and you were creating some beautiful poetry. So I said, this is a very unique person, so let's have him on the show. So I'm very impressed by what you're able to do. Tell us a little bit though, first, where are you coming out from to talk to us today?
I'm from Singapore. So far I've only been doing these live events here in Singapore, but my dream is to someday go to different countries and do it, simply because there's a different culture and different kinds of people that you get to engage with. But unfortunately, so far, due to the whole pandemic thing, although we're slowly getting back there, I've only been able to do it here in Singapore, but we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. So we've had some folks from Singapore actually on the show before. We've had Stephanie Dogfoot. I had a conversation with her, so that was a pretty fun experience. She told me a little bit about Singapore's spoken word poetry scene. Tell me a little bit from your point of view. So you don't quite do spoken word, but you do poetry. Now, obviously, what's different about your poetry is, I would say yours is almost like art exhibition poetry. With, you come with your typewriter, you come and do your thing, whether brands call you, events, all those types of things. How would you kind of describe how you go about your form of poetry? It's very, very unique and special for sure.
Oh, thank you. I kind of champion. I'm going to assume that you know Allen Ginsberg, right? So Allen Ginsberg is kind of one of my favorite poets, and he always championed this term, first thought, best thought. I'm not sure if he was the one who came up with it, but he was the one who popularized it. And I've always enjoyed the whole feeling about like the first thing that you think of that feels sincere and almost automatic is something that I want to immediately champion. So immediately what I wanted to do was that I have never been quite similar to a lot of these local poets who actually are amazing at their craft, where they take like months to even write one poem, and it's unique and sincere and aching in many ways. But for me, I've always liked the immediacy of it and how it's more about a collaboration between myself and a stranger. And so I personally have always enjoyed that. So when I go to live events, it's always about the energy that you bring and you meet in the middle with someone who you've never even met before, but they're willing to tell you their story. So even if the 3 words are okay, if you gave me 3 words, what would they be?
Oh, let's do this. Yo, okay. All right. So I got 3 words for you. Okay. Amanda, smile, and teeth.
Teeth. Oh yeah, you have a very nice smile, so I'm gonna assume that's part of the reason, right?
Yes.
So maybe I can do it later or something, but like the way that it would be with like with these 3 words, right? To make it a little bit more personalized, I'll ask you something like, okay, what's your favorite song?
Mm.
No, I'm actually asking you.
Oh, you actually asked. All right, my favorite song is Mariah Carey, Hero.
Hey, nice. Okay, so I will try to blend in the lyrics of Hero inside this whole poem, because from the very beginning when you say smile, it feels, and the way that you carry yourself, you seem to have a very good like passion and energy. So hence the word hero actually matches very well with this whole thing. So so I'll kind of like let it flow inside. But that's always been my thing. I kind of like um the poem really is dependent on the person in front of me. So
Yeah.
if they are kind of like a shrinking violet, then I'll make it a little bit more subtle, right? But if
Mm.
they come in with a huge like energy boost, right, then the poem is very different as well. So it kind of depends on who the person is in front of me. I'm not sure if I answer your question, But really, the whole basis of what I do is really about matching the cadence and tempo of the person who sits in front of me.
No, I think that's really amazing though. I think that I'm very intrigued by people because you know what, when you're describing that to me, as I gave you three words and I gave you my favorite song, I don't know, it's almost like, when you talk to a magician and a magician, they're about to do a card trick on you. You know what I mean? And they're asking you all these kind of indirect questions. They're like, okay, well, who did you last see? My sister. Well, who's the last person that you saw that you said I love you to? My sister. And then they're like, is your sister's, you know what I mean? What, this is your sister's
Yeah,
name.
I get you.
It's almost like kind of like
Yeah.
a hat trick almost. For you, how did you kind of develop that skill though? Because that's such a person to person, you have to really engage with people. And that's not an easy skill to kind of possess and really get around to. How did you kind of harness that to really engage in that type of way to now write these amazing poems about people?
Oh, thank you. I don't know if this is what's the term again when you're very um oh my goodness, I completely forgot the term. But basically is when someone tells you that you're good at something, but it almost feels a bit natural to you, where it doesn't really feel like a skill set. And you almost, oh, imposter syndrome. Sorry, imposter syndrome. So
Ah,
you almost feel a little bit like, oh, it's just something I enjoy, but I never really thought that it would be something I could actually um put food on the table for. It all began when I was at some. Okay, so basically in the novel encounter, what I started off with doing was selling these mystery wrapped books. So I would sell books where I'll wrap them up and I'll put a sentence on it. So for example, if I was selling the book Harry Potter, I will wrap it up and put the front cover um, boy finds out that he's magic in like a blah 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 blah, and people go, oh, that's interesting, so they'll buy the book based on that sentence. So I was invited to some vintage fair, and across from me there was someone selling typewriters, and so I was immediately drawn to it because I love the sound, I love how they look, and so I'm one of those people that enjoys collecting vinyl records as well. So I just love anything that's old, like even like old lighters, like with words and on it.
nice, nice.
So
Yeah.
I remember that I walked over to the booth and I was just dabbling away and just playing around. And there was this girl next to me, and she said that, oh, like if I gave you, if I told you my life story, would you be able to write me something on the spot? And because there was no pressure to it, and it wasn't like I was charging any money for it, I said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And somehow, for some reason, it struck out to her, and I started to try selling these at first. So I was selling it for like I think $5 each. Then eventually it kind of grew on there. But and I never really saw myself as having a talent or a skill for it. I think it was just more of an enjoyment of engaging with strangers. Like kind of like what we're doing now, right? The more you talk to someone, whether or not you've met before, they kind of show their soul to you, even if it's just a little bit and a little bit. And I think that people who are inclined towards the creative pick up on subtle things, and that's when poetry comes about.
Or no, I completely agree with that. I think it's it's was it the phrase is the devil is in the details. I really do
Yeah,
believe that.
absolutely.
Like you can really find someone out by the small kind of minute details of, whether it be outward behavior, the little things they say, or just the little things that they may not say, or little things that they do. So I think this is just so fascinating. You're known for this brand of poetry, again, where you give three words, a bit of backstory, you write the poem in 5 minutes, you use a vintage typewriter. For you, kind of, how did you then kind of just start doing this all around Singapore? What was kind of the impetus? Were you, before you started doing this, were you the type that was really, oh, snap? He got all right, everyone that's listening, he's showing us the typewriter right now. That thing is old.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I cut into your question. Yeah.
I know you good. No, as you know what, that is such an amazing thing to see because people don't see typewriters these days. For those that are listening on the podcast, he just showed us the actual typewriter that he uses. How old would you say that is? That the typewriter you're using?
It's a refurbished 1920s typewriter. So I kind of enjoy the idea that, like, okay, my favorite writer is F. Scott Fitzgerald, right? So I imagine people like him, actual writers, like clacking away on this thing, and it just makes me kind of happy that I'm enjoying someone else's heritage. Um,
Absolutely, yeah. That's super dope. I'm curious then, before you kind of started becoming going all around Singapore doing that, obviously, my question for you was, when did you find out poetry is something that you want to do? Were you in a previous career before this? Or was this kind of your first thing that you decided to do, become a writer and do poetry?
oh, great question. When I was younger, I always thought I'd be a journalist, simply because I always admired journalists. I think there was a very famous story about this woman who was, I think it was in the Middle East, where she was, I mean, viewer discretion, she was brutally beaten and raped and everything. And so she was running out, I think she was like almost nude or something like that, but she didn't run to the police. She ran into this room of journalists and she was screaming, "Tell them my story." And she was screaming, "Please tell them my story." And that always struck out to me, in how like real journalism, proper sincere journalism, actually it shows the impact of what people's stories actually are. So when I was younger, I always said, you know what, I'm going to be a journalist. I'm going to be a wartime journalist and tell people's stories. But actually, when I ended up going about doing it, I realized that it was quite limited, and absolutely nothing against news. You cannot describe the color of the sky. You cannot describe someone's emotion. It's very point formed, where it's like, the day was Monday, it was raining, this thing happened. And for me, I always enjoy bringing in flowery language. So it kind of came by accident. Like I said, the novel encounter started out by just selling novels, and little did I know that people would actually resonate with my writing, and that kind of was how it all began, and continued through strangers actually feeling something that I wrote.
Okay, so you first started off from jump, you were completely doing writing. Completely
Always,
you
yeah.
started. Oh wow, okay. So you've mentioned the novel encounter now a couple times. A novel encounter, for those that don't know, is Adams. It's a curated mystery wrapped book business that he started. So talk a little bit about that. You started this whole collective novel encounter. Tell us, what's the purpose behind mystery wrapped book business? Tell us exactly what that means.
Okay, so it's kind of daring you to pick a book by its cover, literally, right? So I think when I was younger, reading has always kind of saved me. Okay, random question: were you ever bullied as a child?
Yes.
Yeah, I was pretty badly bullied at one point in my life, and for some reason, like, literature was what made me feel like I could escape, and it was kind of therapeutic for me. So books have always meant the world to me, books and writing. So I think that when I wanted to stop doing journalism, like, I was asking a buddy of mine, what should I do? And he told me that if you want to start your own business, it should be something you're passionate about. And the first thing I thought of was, okay, I'm going to sell books. Like, I don't care. But then I wanted to sell the curation of books. And so my buddy, who he was actually an established entrepreneur at the time, he told me that, no offense, but you don't have a name in the literary cycle, right? Who's going to want to read your curation? And he said you should make a spin out of it. You should make a concept, and that's how this whole mystery wrapped book business came about. But I really just wanted people to read a selected curation of novels, regardless of what my margins were. I just was really passionate about making people fall in love with words as much as I was. So that actually till now is still the main reason why I do what I do, is because I just want people to feel less alone or more connected, as you could say.
Absolutely. No, that's a very interesting kind of way for you to kind of start your business. So let's see what kind of, so tell us a little bit about, what does that mean though? A mystery wrapped book business. Like, what does that per se mean? What exactly does that look like in a book for a bookseller? Does this come in the form of a bookshop? Do you have libraries? What does that look like?
Oh, right. It's just an online store. So I have a website called thenovelencounter.com, where you can literally just browse this online catalog, and then you get to pick a book based on that. And only when you purchase it and bring it home, then you unwrap it and you see what the book actually is. So I used to do pop-ups as well, but for now I kind of realized that I want to focus more on my poetry and more of my writing, simply because I felt that that was what made me feel the most connected and the most happy.
Nice,
Um,
nice. So for the novel encounter, I'm curious then. So you said literally people, they literally open it and it's a surprise what the book is.
Yeah, this might be bad for your audio listeners, but okay. So here's an example, right? So here's the wax seal, and the sentence is just a masterful and clever mystery novel that will crack you up. So literally, you're like, oh, that actually sounds like something I would like, and then you purchase it, and then when you unwrap it, and then you see what the book is inside. But it's literally just a mystery concept where you don't know what it is until you.
Oh wow. Okay, so that's really special and unique. So for those listening at home, what it is, it's basically it's basically a book collection curated. You kind of are able to pick a different type of book with a different type of message. You bring it home with you, got a seal on it, you read what's on the front and you're like, "Whoa, what's this message?" You open up the book and it's the book to whatever book is curated by that message. It's really special. How did you come up with that? I'm really fascinated. How did you come up? That's a very unique, really idea. That's a really good idea for people to enjoy reading. I'm sure enjoy reading in a whole different type of way. How did you come up with that per se? Like, what made you think surprise books? Almost. What really kind of pushed you in that direction, like to make a business idea off of surprising people with books in that type of way?
I can't actually come up with the exact moment that made me realize that, but I do know that it all began when me and my entrepreneur friend were talking about, okay, I want to start a business. What are you interested in? Books. And it was hours and hours of thinking what would be the coolest idea to go about it. Okay, so my initial idea was really quite insane. So I think it was called like the book. Oh, what was it called again? I think the book matchmaker or something like that, where all you need to do is tell me a sentence about what your personality is, and then I will pick a book and send it to your house. And it got less and less romantic after that. It became more like a collection rather than, because it would be very hard for me to scale if that was going about it. So actually, talking to you made me realize that that's kind of exactly what I do with my poetry. Right? It's about finding ways to make someone connect with words instead of an actual novel, but it's about like a customized poem, which is what people seem to gravitate more towards. Like I think whether it doesn't have to be poetry, right? It's also people want something more customized and personalized for them because we feel like we recognize that we are very intricate as people. So there's a difference between you purchasing a poem by Charles Bukowski, which was written like ages ago, or a poem that was written specifically through an interaction with you. And I think people recognize that there's something beautiful that can be seen in what in what a stranger sees in you, whether it's a caricature or a poem or like a melody, anything.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I love that. I love that. That is very electric, if you will. So you know what? Speaking of electric, talk about you've had your first novel, This Life Electric. I love that title. How was writing your first novel as opposed to writing your book of poetry, Finders and Keepers? For you, it's obvious you really switching back, you dabble back and forth between obviously with the, I would say, performance poetry with your typewriting, but also you do the also novels as well as the poetry. Tell us what is, talk about how you made that first novel, going from, obviously the bookshop to now making your first novel, This Life Electric. What was that process like?
I love your questions. So actually, it was much easier for me to write poetry because I think that I believe that whether it's poetry or prose, there's always a beauty in not explaining too much. Like, because you must have a certain kind of respect to your reader to not put everything out there. So with poetry, it was actually a lot faster. I wrote it within 6 months. Um, and then with the novel, it took me 2.5 years, which I was legitimately surprised because I thought I could write a lot faster. But I think with prose, it's a there's so much that goes into it. There's so many drafts. There's so many different things. Because like I think it's kind of like a wormhole, right? Have you dabbled in? Wait, do you personally enjoy writing prose or poetry yourself?
Absolutely.
Nice. What do you prefer doing more?
Um, I mean, honestly, it just depends on the day. I love doing both. It just
Yeah,
depends on how I'm feeling, honestly, whatever season I'm in.
yeah. I personally prefer prose, although I'm more known here for my poetry. But I think that when you write prose, you go through a wormhole because you imagine that chapter one you're writing about this guy, and then as you write your book, because it takes longer than a poem, even your own personal beliefs and experiences change. So your character morphs with you, and you could have started the book with in a very cynical mindset, but at the end, you as a person have become more hopeful. So your character has to like evolve as well. And I'm not sure if this is the case with most writers, but for me, when I wrote the first draft of my novel and when it finally got published, I realized that I was a lot more hopeful as an individual. I started out like I started the novel in heartbreak, and then at the end of it, you realize that this people kind of celebrate and enjoy the cynic, but I think when in the society in a world where there's so much, especially right now, there's so much chaos and cynicism. You should always make room for sincerity and hope. And I didn't want to just make room for it. I wanted to make a haven, and that's kind of how the whole book came about. It's about like a celebration of sincerity. And I'm not sure if I answered your question right, but I think it's just about the main difference is a novel kind of feels a lot more personal than a poem in some ways because there's so much more. It's kind of like how I told you when two strangers talk. So much of your soul, the devils and the details slowly seep out. With prose, there's so much room for your soul to be shown. It's kind of like in Picture of Dorian Gray when people actually use the Picture of Dorian Gray to get Oscar Wilde in jail because they proved how much of a person he was through his writing. And yeah, and so I think a writer can never hide his soul if he writes sincerely.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting kind of take on things. Let's see.
Now, what's your thoughts on this whole thing?
I think that's a very interesting thing. I think that you know what? That's a very interesting thought. You said you think that a writer can never hide their soul, no matter what they're writing. I yeah, I mean, I think, your perspective and your truth, your version of joy would be different than my version of joy. Your version of pain and sorrow is different from my version of pain and sorrow. I think your version of trauma would be different than my version of pain and trauma. Similar to, your version of joy is different than my pain and my joy. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's a tough thing to kind of meddle around with because I feel like everyone is a quote that I really like is, 100 books, 100 different stories. So, there's over 6 billion
Yeah,
people walking this earth. So everyone literally has a different story to tell. Everyone has a different perspective. So I feel like interestingly enough, as someone that does spoken word for a living, I do feel like in some ways, though, through your writing, you can hide because you can put on a mask to, let's say, because I dabble more so in spoken word poetry. So performance is a big part of what I do. I do think
yeah, very nice.
you can find some sort of way to mask the, pain inside of you by putting on this kind of pseudonym, a different
Yeah,
identity to really perform and write with. So I mean, I think that's an interesting kind of dichotomy when, I look at it from both ends of the spectrum. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people can hide through their writing, but then a lot of people, they can't escape out of their writing. So the true them only has to come out because writing's their only conduit. But at the same time, too, some people, it's relieving for them to put on a mask through their writing. So I don't know. You know what? I think it's a really a toss up. I think it's no answer to me is the correct one.
yeah, same. Like I actually love hearing your perspective.
Mm, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, you know what? You turned the interview on me a little bit right there. Hold on. I'm interviewing you. What you mean? All
I'm
right.
sorry.
No problem.
Yeah.
So Adam, this is very interesting hearing you talk about this. Now I'm curious for you. Obviously, you started off with business. How do you balance the writing and obviously, your novel, now your poetry, your performance poetry, and then you're balancing all these things as a brand. as a business, and then creativity. How do you balance and kind of merge those worlds together? I think a lot of people, when they think of spoken word poetry, again, or they think of poetry, poems, poets, people don't quite understand that there's a business side to it, that people are making, businesses off of this combined with their creativity. People don't quite understand that aspect to a lot of our work. How do you find yourself being able to balance poetry as a brand, as a business, your creativity?
Man, you ask amazing questions. Uh, I think when it comes to creativity meeting the commerce, to some point you will always feel like a sellout because you're always answering to someone. And deep down, we all kind of want, as creatives, I think similar with you, we don't want to answer to anyone. We want to express exactly what we want to express. But when it comes to working with a business, you sometimes you can't do that. I think there was once when I was doing a live event. I'm not going to say which brand, and there was a client who was asking about a poem about hope, and I remember one of the lines I used was, um, "Please do not engage with the cynicism. There is a world roaring inside you," or something like that, right? And then the client pulled me aside and go, "Hey, hey, hey, you can't say stuff like 'please don't,' and you can't say 'make sure,' and you can't say 'remember,' because that is like you're instructing them, and you need to not instruct my guests." And I went, "Oh God, okay." So I had to change it again, and then I changed it, and she pulled me aside and goes, "Hey, you can't do that." And it just I ended up just writing templates. It was literally just, "Hi, thank you for, um, it is a pleasure, and sincerely yours." And it became very. I just don't like it when poetry feels like a template. It just makes me very anxious because it feels like what I'm doing isn't sincere. And whenever I feel that something isn't sincere, I get a little bit anxious. Um, but I think that at the end of the day, it's really about finding your safe spots. Um, because I think we all have to answer to someone in the end, regardless of what it is. So I think with my own poetry, I stick to what I personally believe in. But when it comes to clients, I tell myself that this you can enjoy different variants of things as long as it's something that you enjoy. But when creativity meets commerce, there's always room for you to feel like a phony or you feel like you're not as real as you want to be. But you don't have to be like entirely honest all the time. If someone, okay, I kind of rank it as this. Have you heard the song by the Police? Every breath you take.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So that song is about a guy stalking his ex-wife, right? But so many people use it as their wedding song.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
yeah, and so does the fact that they misinterpret his song make it less of a sincere feeling of what they feel with their wife or husband? Um, can you actually enjoy something without fully understanding the meaning of it? And I think that to me, the answer is yes, because your feeling is sincere even if you misinterpret what the artist was trying to do. And so I kind of comfort myself by saying that when you don't have to be entirely sincere in your creativity as long as what the reader or what the person experiences is something sincere.
Okay, wow. So for you, what do you think then about kind of this what are your thoughts then on this kind of maybe looking at forms of traditional marketing versus this kind of newer new age marketing for poetry? Because obviously, like we talk about interpretation, I mean, a poem can be interpreted in a billion different ways. Like I said earlier, how I experience joy is not how you experience joy. Maybe, what you consider offensive is not what I would consider offensive, all those things. How for you in today's kind of like space that we're in, how do you kind of, I don't know, how would you say you market your poetry then? How do you kind of market that type of exhibition that you're doing with your poetry through the typewriter with the 3 words? How do you kind of market that in today's kind of climate?
Oh my goodness, you and your questions. Oh God. Oh, I think you have me stumped. That's an amazing question. Okay, I was at a live event once, and I remember it was a guy and his girlfriend. And okay, this should not have affected me as much as it did, but for like, I think 5 minutes, it really sank in. where he was walking past and the girlfriend went, "Oh, I really want to try this," and the guy just went, "Come on, it's a gimmick," and he pulled her away. And a part of me was like, "That this is not a gimmick. Like, I don't appreciate that." Because I think, no, but then again, it was me taking it too personally, right? Because to any stranger who walking by, give me 3 words, I'll write you a poem on the spot. It does sound a bit gimmicky to some, right? But I think the moment shared with the stranger is where the sincerity happens. And oh, sorry, what was the question again? I remember I was answering it.
No, just in terms of how do you market yourself, because your poetry interpreted any type of way, how do you market what you do now with the 3 words?
Yeah, so I think that yeah, to answer that, whether sometimes when I do certain things, I feel a bit gimmicky. Like for example, I have a friend who does marketing a lot, and he says you need to do more poetry on TikTok.
Mm,
And part of me, like, yeah, I mean, at first I was a bit averse to it, but when you see the amount of different creative ways people use TikTok for poetry, it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. I don't have the skill set for that, but I'm trying to dabble in new ways of how I can express writing. Um, yeah, I really don't have have a good answer for you.
mm. No, I think that's a very fascinating thing. Like you kind of you telling that story of how you had the couple that walked by you and someone the gentleman, he was just like, oh, this is a gimmick. Yeah, no, when I do get that, I'm curious for what you do. Do you get that a lot? You know, you're sitting at these events, whether you're in the corner, in the front, you're kind of sitting there with your typewriter. Do you get people kind of having those types of remarks towards you? How
Oh
does it
no,
mhm.
no, I've been very lucky that a lot of people are very kind about what I do. But I do think there will be some that just immediately assume that this whole thing is just like it's not possible for someone to actually create something that's sincere in such a short span of time. But I think that that's where the part plays where it's me talking to a stranger. Like I don't immediately have you sit down and you tell me 3 words and I just write you something because after a while, if I follow a template, it's easy, right? But I refuse to follow a template because first thought, best thought, and I would like to know more about you before I get started. And I think that anyone who sits in front of me knows that I'm not phoning it in. Like because then there's no point. I refuse to phone it in, and I think that's what I do with to answer your question about how do I try to market what I do. I think that as long as even if I do gimmicky things like what poetry, TikTok or whatnot, as long as it feels like what I'm doing is still sincere, then I will explore anything really.
Nice, nice. Okay, word, word. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that.
I love your questions.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, I'm loving your answers. So here's another question for you. So as you said, you're kind of verging towards you want to step away from writing, you really want to go in with poetry. What do you think people can take away from poetry? Like just the ultimate takeaway as a poet. What do you think people can take away from poetry?
That there should be less safeguards. I think.
Mm,
I think that okay, I wouldn't say her name, but there was a local girl who created like a poetry book and it got a lot of backlash simply because her stanza wasn't right because her writing was a little bit uh, young and it was just like like they call it Instagram poetry where it's literally just a sentence and then she got so much backlash and online hate that it was kind of hurtful for me because okay I don't have a degree in poetry so a part of me felt that oh what if someone actually did that to me. I've been very lucky that no one has yet but I think that when people point the finger and say that I don't like what you're writing, hence it can't be good. I think that I always stand by this that anything that's written sincerely can't be bad. It can be a little bit immaturely written. It can lack the quality that a traditional or like established poet can write, but we don't deserve to be insulted for expressing ourselves. And I think that that's why I say the thing about safeguards because now that there's TikTok, right? There's Instagram. There's there's like blogs, right? Anyone can be a poet, and it's not so much about whether you want to be lauded with acclaim and awards, but because you just want to express yourself. So I think for me is, as long as you write something sincerely, it cannot be bad.
Mm. So you think everyone is a poet?
I kind of think that anyone can be.
Mm. Hmm. Word. That's very interesting. Okay, so Adam, as we are wrapping up, this interview has been so fascinating, so interesting. I'm gonna ask you. Absolutely, very fun. So I have one last question before we wrap up for you. Okay.
Yes.
So Adam, Ty, please tell me, why do you need to get your words out?
I want to celebrate.
Mm,
I think that when I was younger, and I told you I was bullied, um, I used to feel that my words didn't mean as much because, when you say something and immediately the bullies just jump on you like vultures because they just insult the way you say something, or they insult the way you speak, or they insult your cadence or anything like that, whether you stutter, whether you have a weird mannerism. And so I used to use writing, poetry, prose as a means to escape and as a means to express myself. But the more I wrote, the more you realize that when you write something and people tell you that they enjoy it, a lot of it is not just because you are spectacular. I mean, okay, the writing could be good, not to self praise, but I'm just saying that it's because they felt something in what you wrote, and it's more about them connecting with you rather than anything. So less about expressing. Now I kind of want to inspire, and the message will always be: we are not as alone as we think we are, and we are connecting in strange spaces. And so I kind of wanted to keep doing that for my live events or with anything, one stranger at a time.
that's what's up. Wow. Okay. Such a beautiful answer for a beautiful end to a beautiful interview. Adam,
Thank
this has
you.
been so great talking to you. So before we wrap up, tell us, what is 2022 looking like for you? Your writing, beyond your poetry, with your typewriting, and tell us, where can we check out all of your amazing work with social media links, all that good stuff.
Hey, awesome. Oh, so you can find me on the Nova Encounter on Instagram, Facebook, and my online website is thenovaencounter.com. As for what's going on in 2022, I think my readers know this. I've been working on a novel. I hope to get the first draft done by the end of the year, but this is going to be my big one. Like, I think I've been planning it since before This Life Electric. So I've wanted to write this for many, many years now, and I've just been building up on the experience of it. But I'm really excited, and hopefully it will come out as good in paper as it is in my head. So I think, like, for the last few years, I felt kind of in my own head, but this year feels kind of like a fresh new spark. Like, I somehow found a new kind of energy, and I'm loving 2022 so far.
That's what's up. All right. Well, we're so happy to hear that. Again, everyone check out all of Adam's amazing work. Again, his information, all his descriptions will be in the YouTube channel, in the YouTube link, in the YouTube description box of this podcast, of this episode. So everyone check out the Poet Speaks podcast on YouTube. Check out the description box of this episode so you can check out all of Adam's amazing links. Check out what he's doing, all his amazing work. Adam, thank you so much for being on the Poet Speaks podcast today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. And everyone, this is Adam Ty. Check out all of his amazing stuff. And remember, we are the #1 spoken word poetry podcast in the world. Please don't forget. All right. Everyone, check us out everywhere. Like, subscribe, comment, share, everyone that you know. All right. This is the Poet Speaks podcast, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.